Hi, and welcome to today's episode of The Property Pod. Today I'm joined by Wendy Whittaker-Large, who is our first remote guest of the series. Welcome to The Property Pod. Thanks so much for coming on. And
Thank you, Libby.
Yeah, thank you. And she is the property investor, entrepreneur, and she's founded multiple companies, including HMO Success, Best Nest, and Best Nest Egg, which is a high-end HMO sourcing company. So welcome, and it's great to have you on in this remote fashion. It's very modern of us, very 2022. But yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So tell us a bit about your company, HMO Success.
Well, I started HMO Success about 4 or 5 years ago, when I had developed my own successful portfolio of HMOs. So I had a small portfolio of single buy-to-lets, and realised that I wasn't going to be financially free anytime soon by continuing to invest in single buy-to-lets. So I got into HMOs. That was about 2013. And after about 4 years of investing, I had become financially free. We had a very good stream of income. I'd left my job, my husband left his job, and we really had quite a lot of time on our hands. And I remember starting to speak at different events. People asked me to go and speak and tell them how I had built up this portfolio relatively quickly. And I wrote a book about it as well. And as a result, people started to ask me to mentor and coach them. And I thought, yeah, that sounds like something I could do. So I set up HMO Success as a mentoring and training business. So I now mentor and train other people to develop HMO portfolios using other people's money and doing it with as little of their own time as possible.
Yeah, it's really, really great knowledge to have nowadays as well, especially when the property market is just so busy at the moment. So yeah. And what do you think the best way is to get started as a property investor?
Well, it's a really good question. I think there are lots of different ways in which you can get started these days. I think most people think that they have to save a lot of money for a deposit, and effectively that's a very traditional route. But saving money for a deposit and getting a mortgage, either a buy-to-let mortgage or presumably maybe a residential mortgage to get your own property, and starting that way. But the more that I've gone on property, the more I've realized there are many more creative ways of buying property and securing property. And actually, you don't need to have a lot of money to get started. It's a myth to think that you have to have a lot of money to get started in property. Obviously, it helps. It can be quicker, but there are many different methods and means by which you can secure property, which does not rely on having cash. It really just relies on having confidence and knowledge. And I would say that for a lot of people, really the way to get started is to be educated, because once you know what's possible and you know how to do certain tools, you know how to use certain tools that are perfectly viable and legal, you can build up a very quick pot of income without using much of your own money to start with. So I think there are lots of different ways to get started, actually.
Okay, great. And what do you think are the advantages of investing in a house of multiple occupancy as opposed to an apartment?
Well, clearly you have 5 or 6 times the rental income. So that's the first major benefit, is that you take one property, and rather than having one family or couple renting that house, you now have 5 individuals renting the separate rooms. So it means that you have 5 times your income. And in many ways, that's exactly the reason why I started investing in HMOs, because I saw the multipliers. I looked at the maths and I realized that I could take a normal 2 or 3 bed detached property and create a property that had multiple income streams in one house. And I think that's why a lot of people get started in HMOs, is because they can see the maths make sense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's great. I suppose you could literally, there's so much room for sort of expansion and stuff within a house. So have you done sort of stuff like where you've thought, oh, there's quite a bit of garden space here, and, you know, maybe I could extend a little bit and make another bedroom just to maximize that return on investment, do you think?
Absolutely, Libby. That's exactly it. You've got the mind of a property investor already.
Thank you.
It's all about maximising your asset. It's all about making the most of what you have. And that's absolutely true, that quite often you'll find that estate agents, in fact, are not very good at spotting these, what I call jewels in the crown. You quite often will do a property viewing, and there's a jewel in the crown, and it could be an outbuilding, it could be an attached garage, it could be a loft that is not developed, is not extended. All of these give possibilities for extra income streams. So if you can find the cash to be able to do the development, and there's lots of creative ways in which you can find that money, you then can add on many more opportunities in that particular property for creating extra income streams. And that's exactly what I always teach people to do, is to maximize the value, the potential of that property.
Yeah, definitely. It's really exciting. But how much money do you think you need to invest to get started in an HMO?
Well, you don't need any money. You can start with no money at all. I've worked with people who've got no money at all. They live off what they earn and they have no savings, and yet they've been able to get started in HMOs because there are tools like purchase lease options. There are ways in which you can form joint ventures with other people who have a lot of money but don't have much time. And by forming a joint venture, you can use their money to create income for yourself and for them. So money should never be a barrier to investing in property, which may sound a bit counterintuitive. And if you don't know how to do this, of course you will think, hang on a minute, this is alchemy, this is impossible, it can't be done. But it actually can be done. And I've done it myself. I've run out of money many times, but still carried on growing my portfolio. So it's a myth to think you need to have a lot of money to get started in HMOs. Yes, you've got to find some money from somewhere. You've got to find the resources from somewhere. But in my experience, being a resourceful person, being confident, being willing to learn, being humble, being open, spending time reading, learning, investing with other people is as valuable as having £200,000 to start with. I've known people who are multimillionaires and think they have no money because their money is invested in the wrong asset classes and they're not making an income from that money. They're not financially educated. You can be very rich but still lack financial education. But once you are financially educated, then it's more than likely you will also manifest that by actually becoming wealthy as well.
Yeah, well, that's really great that you to hear that you can sort of just start with nothing as long as you have the practical skills and knowledge, and someone like you, for example, to just help you with that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's great. And in your opinion, how long do you think it takes to buy an HMO?
Well, it all depends on how you're going to buy it. If you buy it through the traditional route, for example, if you're going to buy a normal family home and then convert it into an HMO, I would say you need to be prepared for it to take at least 6 months to go through the whole process of conversion and refurbishment. If you're going to use a more creative strategy like a lease option, for example, you can purchase, or should I say control the property very, very quickly. It could happen in a matter of weeks. But if you're going to be buying it, I think, one of the challenges is the conveyancing process. So what I always recommend to people is while that property is going through that process of conveyancing and your solicitor's doing the checks and they're checking out the contract and so on and so forth, that's a really good time to be preparing for the refurbishment, because the refurb, once it starts, will take up quite a lot of your time and your energy, and you need to be prepared for the next few months, the dust, the dirt, the questions from the builder, and being prepared for that before a spade is in the ground is very, very helpful. But yes, if you were to ask me what's the time scale for producing an HMO from scratch, I would say you're looking at least 6 months, and it could be a little bit longer as well, depending on how much work you're going to do in the property, how big you want it to be, how many people you'll be renting to.
Yeah, okay, great. And what obligations does an HMO landlord have?
Well, it's a very good question. There are more and more regulations these days than there were when I first started. Even less than 10 years ago, things have changed. Wow. So if you have an HMO which is rented to 5 or more people, you have to have a license. Okay. Now, that requires you to meet certain amenity standards, fire safety standards, housing standards. And I think it's really important that you check out with your local authority what those standards are, because they do differ slightly across the country. In some areas, for example, it's acceptable to have a room which is 6.52 meters squared, which is the national standard. But in some areas, they have raised that standard and they want it to be at least 8 or 10 meters squared. So you need to find out from your local authority which is their standard. And then Your local authority will also have a list of other regulations that you need to adhere to. And these will include anything from the type of smoke detection system that you need to have through to the system that you have for managing the property, all sorts of details about how that property is set up and run. So that's really important. And I think once you are licensed, generally you'll find that most of your obligations, your legal obligations, are met within that license, because there are a number of different factors to the license. Yes, the safety factors need to be met, but also, are you a fit and proper person? And in fact, in our area, we were even asked to do DBS checks to prove that we haven't got a criminal record if we're going to manage an HMO or be the licensor of the HMO.
Yeah. But good. So I suppose, it's very good that that's all done properly. And who is responsible within an HMO for maintaining the common areas?
Well, ideally, it's the tenants. You would hope that they would, maintain the communal areas and keep them neat and tidy.
Yeah, you'd hope.
And certainly in our house rules, we do ask tenants to, clear up after themselves, do their own washing up and that kind of thing. It doesn't always happen, no. I'm afraid to say. So, which is why we send regular cleaners in. Our cleaners tend to go in every fortnight and give a really good deep clean of all the communal areas. And we also have monthly checks. We have monthly fire and health and safety checks on the building. So our maintenance team go in and check the property. So again, they can see if people are hanging things on the radiators or leaving their shoes lying around in the hallway. They can tidy up the communal areas a little bit when they're there, which is really helpful. And I think you find that with an HMO, there is more toing and froing, more coming and going in those communal areas. So it is good to keep an eye on it and to have a regular system, a method by which you're checking out those areas.
Okay, great. And what kind of return on investment should people expect from an HMO, do you think?
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer, because in different parts of the country, you will have different types of return. For some people, over the last 2 years, they've experienced incredible capital growth. And actually up in the Northwest, which traditionally we haven't seen a lot of capital growth until recently. The last 2 years have been exceptional, of course, as I think has affected, everybody has seen the effects of inflation on property prices. But I would say that when you're looking at the whole package, if you decide to refinance once you have finished your project, I personally wouldn't be happy with anything less than 25% return on investment. To me, I think that you need to be looking at a reasonable level that's higher than a single buy-to-let, for example. I mean, ideally, you want an infinite return. Ideally, you want to be able to use none of your own money to invest with, or you certainly want to recycle your money so that at the end of the project, it's all on refinance and you've left none of your own money into the project. So infinite return is always where we try and aim for. But failing that, 25% return, I think, is a good return on the money that you've left into the project. And I think anything less than that, and I would be a little bit wary about starting a project if I felt that wasn't something I could achieve at the end of it. Yeah,
definitely. Okay, great. And what's the best way to add value to an HMO, do you think?
So again, really valuable question. I think that's really important to think about that. And this is why I always like to find properties where perhaps the estate agent or the vendor hasn't identified the opportunities. Sometimes it could be that there is a garden that you can develop into. As I said earlier, it could be a loft extension that you could carry out. One of the things that I am not keen on is what I call invisible improvements. I always feel that if you're going to try and do anything to an HMO, if you are carrying out improvements that have really very little value in terms of what the tenants will appreciate or what the surveyor will appreciate, it's better to try and avoid them. What do I mean? Well, things like double glazing. If you buy a house that's already got double glazing, then UPVC double glazing, already the EPC will be better. But not only that, but it saves you spending £6,000 or £8,000 upgrading the double glazing. And frankly, when a surveyor comes round, there is only a scant amount of attention paid to what type of UPVC double glazing you have. And you can spend an awful lot of money buying. You could be faced with two properties to buy, one of which has single unit glazing or old-fashioned UPVC, and another one which is more modern UPVC. Otherwise, they could be identical. Maybe the more modern one is slightly more expensive, but it's not going to be significantly more expensive, because generally that property is valued on the bricks and mortar and the land that it sits on and the location in which it's located. So actually, buy the property that already has the good quality UPVC, because that will save you hundreds of pounds, thousands of pounds, and it's only an invisible repair that really people are not going to notice. Other things like the type of walls, if you're not going to be doing a huge refurb and therefore not replastering the whole house, far better to buy a house that's already got smooth walls.
Yeah, of course.
Much easier for you to redecorate, much easier for you to paint without having to, be chipping away at Artex or worrying about asbestos, which can be in old-fashioned Artex, which you then have to remove very carefully, etc. All of these invisible improvements, unless you're buying the property at a significantly reduced price, will just add to your bottom line and will not add to your return.
Okay, great. And what's the best way, do you think, to advertise an HMO property?
You mean for rental?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, So we use spare room a lot. That's our main method of advertising, but we have our own website. We use Facebook, Instagram. We have to-let boards outside our properties. We get quite a lot of inquiries from people who are driving past and see the number and phone up. So yeah, I think you've got to be creative. Having said that, I think the market is very, very busy at the moment, and we don't have problems selling our rooms. We don't have problems keeping them filled. So I think that if your house is attractive, well laid out, and well positioned, then you shouldn't really have any problems selling your rooms. I think that using those channels are the main ones that we tend to use.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. That's great. Thank you so much for all the information. It's very interesting, very exciting topic as well. Just even from my own perspective, like just to get involved in all that sort of world of property investment, and there doesn't seem to be a limit on sort of, the sky's the limit of what you can do with it. So it does sound really great. But thank you so much for coming on. It's been great. And for all you guys at home, if you did like this episode, then don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.